Mechanism of breathing and gaseous exchange in the lungs. AQA Biology. Key terms: ventilation, breathing in and out. Inspiration, breathing oxygen into the lungs. Expiration, breathing out carbon dioxide from the lungs. Internal intercostal muscles, contractions that lead to expiration. External intercostal muscles, contractions that lead to inspiration. Tidal volume, the amount of air moving into and out of the lungs during breathing at rest. Expiratory reserve volume, how much extra air anyone can breathe out during forced expiration beyond the tidal limit. Inspiration reserve volume, how much extra air anyone can breathe in during a forced inspiration. Residential volume, the volume remaining in the lungs after maximal expiration. Vital capacity, the largest possible volume. Total lung capacity, the total volume of oxygen able to be held in the lungs. Incidence, the number of cases which can occur in a particular group of people in a given time. Mortality rate, the number of deaths per the population per year of a particular disease. Correlation, an association between two variables. Fibrosis, the formation of scar tissue in the lungs. Asthma, a respiratory condition where the airways become inflamed and irritated due to an allergic reaction to pollen and dust. Mechanism of breathing. Intercostal muscles are located in between the ribs. Ventilation happens as it requires a pressure change to occur in the lungs, so air is forced into the lungs and out via the alveoli into the bloodstream. The movement is triggered by intercostal muscles. What occurs in inspiration? The external intercostal muscles contract and the internal intercostal muscles relax. Ribs support upwards and outwards, increasing the volume of the thorax. The diaphragm muscles contract and flatten, increasing the volume which can be held in the lungs, which causes a low pressure in the lungs compared to the atmospheric pressure, which causes air to be forced in. What occurs in expiration? A high pressure in the lungs causes air to be forced out. Internal intercostal muscles contract and external intercostal muscles relax. Ribs move downwards and inwards, decreasing the volume of the thorax. Diaphragm muscles relax and are pulled up. This decreases the amount of volume in the thorax. Due to the decrease in volume, this results in a higher pressure, so air is forced out due to the great pressure gradient. Breathing calculations. A spirometer is how much air you can inhale and exhale. And how it works is that you would breathe in and out of a machine, which is this one. So you have the clip that's in your mouth and a nose clip on your nose. And you'd breathe in and out of the tank. And the upper half of the tank will, when you breathe out, the upper tank falls and a trace marker is attached to the mobile upper half. So when respiring, the trace will go down. When expiring, the trace will go up. And then they've got soda lime, which absorbs all of the carbon dioxide. And when the way how it's measured is that it has a certain amount of oxygen in the tank. And obviously, as you're using up that oxygen level will decrease. And that is what's measured. Now, these are the key terms that were mentioned in the beginning. So you have the vital capacity, you have the total lung capacity, the inspiration reserve volume, and so on and so on. This is just a diagram showing all of where the key terms will be located on the spirometry wavelength calculator thingy. So you might get a graph and it might ask you about what does this area show, in which it would be the tidal volume, and so on. This is just where they're located on the graph. Pulmonary ventilation rate. Well, this is measured using the tidal volume times the breathing rate. Smoking, correlation and causal. What is the difference between correlation and causal? Well, correlation is a change in one of two variables and is reflected by a change in another variable. And causal is that a correlation doesn't provide evidence that an event caused a reaction. Evidence that smoking kills. Well, it's an environmental pollutant. 115,000 people die early due to smoking. 28,000 people die from lung cancer per year, and 30,000 people die from chronic lung diseases, and it accounts for 80 to 90% of deaths from lung disease. So, how to interpret data to the effects of smoking of smoking pollutant? Well, you would collect the evidence, do retrospective studies and prospective studies, and how to assess cause and correlation. Well, you have many factors involved. You have to have controlled experiments, find enough people so you have a big sample size. It's 7 years before some health risks can become apparent, so it'll be a long-term study. And some data from posts may be unreliable, which will increase the amount of time that you'll need to prove it. Evidence for the link between smoking and the disease. Well, around 1930s to 1940s, there was a claim that was made about the possible cause, and there was epidemiological studies in animals, and even though all of this research had come to play, the concerns didn't actually affect anyone's behavior towards smoking. Ventilation diseases. Lung diseases affect ventilation or gaseous exchange. Pulmonary tuberculosis. Well, it infects the lungs, and the person's immune system builds a wall around bacteria, forming hard lumps called tuberculose. The infected tissue with tuberculose dies, and gaseous exchange surfaces become damaged. Symptoms of tuberculosis: coughing, blood and mucus, chest pains, shortness of breath, and fatigue. Asthma. Asthma is constrictions on the airways, making it difficult to breathe, and large amounts of mucus block the airways. Airflow in and out of the lungs is reduced, and reduced airflow results in decreased oxygen entering the alveoli and the blood. What occurs in an asthma attack? Well, the smooth muscle that links the bronchioles contracts and large amounts of mucus are produced. Symptoms of asthma attack: shortness of breath, wheezing, tight chest, and possibly fatality. Now, what are preventions of asthma attacks? Well, you have inhalers. Gaseous exchange diseases. Fibrosis, which is when scar tissue becomes thicker and less elastic. Lungs are able to expend less amount of less of the surface area of the lungs is able to expand or hold as much air, which decreases the tidal volume. Shorter diffusion rate due to a thicker membrane, and faster ventilation rate due to the body trying to get as much oxygen as possible from the lungs to the blood. So, symptoms of fibrosis. Well, you have shortness of breath, fatigue, dry cough, chest pains, and weakness. Emphysema. Emphysema is when foreign particles in smoke become trapped in the alveoli. It causes an inflammation by phagocytes, and phagocytes produce enzymes which break down the elasticity in the alveoli. Elasticity helps the alveoli recoil and return back to its normal shape after the removal of air is expelled. If air remains trapped, it leads to the destruction of the alveolus walls, which reduces surface area and decreases the rate of gaseous exchange. Symptoms of emphysema is shortness of breath, wheezing, and increased ventilation. Now, I hope you liked this video, and if you found it useful, then please like and subscribe. And the next video will be about enzymes and digestions. Thank you for listening.